Welcome everyone to follow today's webinar on storing sensitive research data. So now to today's topics. We will talk about how the security of your data should be taken care of when you are dealing with confidential or sensitive data, how to classify your research data so that you can separate and know which is confidential and which is not. And what do we mean by sensitive personal data? And then with examples from Aalto University, which services are safe to use with confidential or personal data. Then we'll go through with cases and examples. How can you collaborate and work with confidential data, keeping it secure? And also, if you have something very sensitive called secret data, what kind of services or tools could you use in that case? And we hope that after this webinar, you will know more about data classification and what services are available and how you can work safely with your confidential data. So the first main consideration when working with confidential data is that all these technologies and systems give you just a good start. But the defining factor is actually the people who work with the data. So they have to know how to handle the data with care and how to keep the data confidential. So first, briefly, some best practices and tips how you can take good care of your data and manage it well. Because from the security point of view, we have technology to prevent unauthorized access or data leaks and keeping your data safe and just for you, but so that you can actually keep the data accessible to the persons who need to get it, avoid any accidental loss of data or unwanted changes. You should also manage your data well. So for the basics, so that you can find your files and have access to them, organize well your data, and ensure that your files are shared with the group and only the group that is supposed to get the confidential data, so that everyone will have the access to the data and continue to have. And when people go, they will also lose the access to data, but for those who stay, can still access their data. So the data should be shared within your group, and with confidential data only with the group that is supposed to work with it. And you should also use such logical file names, folder scheme, that everyone can make sense of the data. And also, if you're using something like USB drive and you happen to lose it for anywhere, let's say it gets lost in a metro or personal laptop, you should avoid this scenario and instead use some storage which have automatic backups. And if there's any confidential data on a USB drive, you should protect it with strong encryption. If it's not encrypted, it might even be a data breach. And in that case, just contact security at aalto.fi and they will always help you. And they know what to do in case of possible personal data breach, and to avoid any further damage. It's always best to just contact them and get some help. So don't panic. And about having several versions of the files, it's good to clean up the intermediate data and archive the data to keep. And of course, also the principle for personal data is the minimization. So you should not have just a bunch of intermediate data with confidential data lying around that you are not actually needed. That is not needed anymore. So it's better to keep the data and your folder tidy in that sense that you will have the relevant data there as long as it is supposed to be used and is useful. And more about these good data management principles were given at the introduction lecture of this series. You can watch the recording of that. Then about the principles, how do you classify research data? Which data is confidential, which is not? There are different principles by organization, and it begins with the legislation. There's European-wide legislation, just as the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. And then there are our normal way of research ethics, the worldwide principles for that. And there might then be separate agreements with your partners or the data owners and commercial interests and your organization guidelines. So you can look for the guidelines for your own organization. And here is an example from Aalto University. We follow the principle as open as possible, as closed as necessary. So for any research data that cannot be open, there's a reason for it, that it has to be closed. And for example, in Aalto University, we have 4 levels to classify the research data. It may be public, so if it's practical data that doesn't hurt anybody, or there's no interest if it gets revealed, but it doesn't have to be published openly. And then the level is internal, which is meant for Aalto University people, our students, our researchers, our affiliate researchers, and so on. So this is typically some drafts, meeting memos, internal training material, emails, and this kind of an ordinary working documents files. And confidential data is in basic something that has to be restricted only to certain people who need the data in their work. So there's a short or long list of names and persons who are supposed to get supposed to get the access to that data. And we classify the personal data of research subjects to be one of those, and then, for example, trade secret of research partners. And then the highest level is secret, and secret is the data that would cause major damage if it gets disclosed. So, for example, patient records and health records are considered to this class. And to have a further look at confidential and secret classification categories, we'll be talking about today. So examples what we could say is confidential would be something like invention disclosures before filing the patent application, or perhaps some data, research data that you might have some commercialization potential, and that might lead to this kind of an invention, possibly. That is something that you can keep confidential. Or if you are a research partner that assigns that this is something that's a trade secret or from a company, for example, and those kind of data from industry that they can say that, okay, this is confidential to us, then we will also handle it confidentially during the research. Or if we have directly identifiable personal data of research subjects, that's of course confidential. And also indirect identifiers when it's easy to identify the person. And there's, for example, details of security arrangements of information systems, and this kind of technical specifications might belong to this category. And then when the data is secret, it's usual for health data, patient records, or some other sensitive personal data that might result in major damage when it is disclosed. Or the physical security arrangements and details, persons, buildings. Also, dual-use technologies might fall under this category. And so the distinction between what is secret and what is confidential, it's a little bit case-dependent. And these are some main categories that are easy to say, but the most point is to balance the risk of disclosure and the security measures that you need. Like, what is the value of the data if it's leaked outside, and what is the risk, like what is the damage that will cause? If the damage is great, you will need more security measures and you should handle the data as secret. Or if the damage is not that bad, you can think it's only confidential, and that security level of confidential data systems will also be sufficient. And also this classification might change over time. So for example, you can keep the research data confidential until you publish an article about it. And perhaps you publish the research data alongside with the article at the same time, for example. But just being first to publish this discovery is a good reason to keep the data confidential until your article is out. But between the confidence and secret, the question is very often about kind of a risk analysis. What is the risk of losing or leaking the data? And you can make your decisions on the classification based on that. And then one special category handled by the legislation is sensitive personal data. For example, the General Data Protection Regulation defines the special categories and set of special rules how to handle those. And those include things like racial origin, religious beliefs, and data concerning health, which is a large number of these. These, for example, when we are really dealing with the health and well-being research sector. And also in Finland, data related to criminal records, social security number, bank account details are considered to be sensitive personal data. And this data is to be kept secret if you get it. So what you should do when dealing with this data is try to use the pseudonymization as much as possible, as that will mitigate many risks here. And if there's the data that you cannot pseudonymize, for example, you have an interview videos or people's names are mentioned during the interview, so that kind of data, then you should encrypt it and keep it safe. So it's for this special category personal data, the founding principle in legislation is that the data subset itself can choose to publish or reveal these kind of details about his health, religious beliefs, or so on. But it's not up to researcher to do that. So that's why we are going to keep it secret. And if there is a need to publish this kind of data, you should first anonymize the sensitive data, try to make it away, and there's a separate webinar on how to practically you can do the data anonymization, and you can also look for help from organizations there. And our legal services can, for example, help if you have a project in mind where you would deal with sensitive personal data and you would possibly like to publish some parts where you cannot anonymize the persons totally, for example, some special interviews or videos with some special experts that should be named, or artists, for example. So there might be cases where you have this conflict that you should publish some of the personal data, but it might really be something sensitive. So take that, plan for that in advance, and talk with the legal services so that you can have a workaround which is safe, secure, and legal for everyone. So then a few examples of the IT services we have at Aalto University that you can use for confidential and secret data. And this is the current list we have, and we'll be for a while always evaluating the services. There might be new additions, or we might there might be some new restrictions if we learn new things about these services. But for storing data, we have internal files, internal systems like Teamwork or Secwork for secret data. And there are cloud services such as eDuni, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive for Business that you can use under certain conditions for confidential data. And for secret data, you can also use CSC, sensitive data services. There's a link that after getting the slides, you can look at. IT service cybersecurity team maintains a list of approved IT services that you can use with confidential secret data. And there you can look for allowed services and possible restrictions under which conditions you can use those services. And for secret data, you very often have to use some encryption tools, and there might be need for some custom solutions. You can contact security at Aalto.fi to discuss those with the cybersecurity team. And we will also build at Aalto research environment for secret data. For example, it will be FIN data compliant and audited so that we can use health register data in that environment as well. And for archiving and publishing this kind of data, there are special services, for example, Elixir, biobanks, and even the data archive, FSD, may accept some special data, but they would require the anonymization, but they can also help with that. So this archive is good to contact in advance if you have in mind of archiving something confidential there. But we have services for those, and next we will go through some case examples in what so that we can look at the different cases and what kind of services would be good in there. So at this point, I will invite Dan to introduce our first example.
Okay, so this is our first case where we have a new research project in our group, and we are going to be working with confidential and personal data. So what would be the best way to store and work with it in Aalto?
If your research group has only people from Aalto University, then we could have this Aalto network folder for you and restrict the access to your project group.
Yes, everyone is working in Aalto, or at least they are students in Aalto, but we also have a couple of people who are thesis workers and they do not have access to Aalto workstations. So how could they work with the data?
Okay, because the data is confidential, they cannot use their own personal devices, as IT services or Aalto University cannot guarantee the security of the personal devices. So therefore, they would either need an Aalto laptop, if there's a spare one from the department that they could use, or then they could use the VDI service so that they can securely connect with their own device, own laptop to the VDI service and use an Aalto workstation through that VDI service. They will get the Aalto workstation and all the software and data connections available there. So in that case, the data handling is actually done at the Aalto servers, and they will only see the data through their screen and keyboard. So that's a safe way to use confidential data, even with a personal laptop.
Okay, that would be case one solved. So we have the next case, case two. In this case, our project is working with a Finnish company developing a new innovative technology. The technology and the data it produces is still very confidential, and we have a contract enforcing this. The dataset is several hundreds of gigabytes in size. Where can we store and share the project data with the members from the company?
Well, you need some collaboration tool to work with the company, and you have a large data set. So I would recommend that you will look at together at the company about the possible if the Aalto's Microsoft OneDrive could be an option that could be agreed by both parties. So if the company agrees to hold their data and share that one at the Microsoft Cloud, then from Aalto's side, that would be okay as well. You just have to restrict the access to the project member groups only, and then check that you are not going to share your data with open links, but you will only use links that work with the people with existing access, or that you will have a direct access only, because open links might reveal the data to third parties if there's a link that anyone can click and use.
Okay, this should work for our case two. So we have still another case. We have case three. where we are coordinators in a multinational EU project with confidential data. And at least some administrative data needs to be stored somewhere where all partners can have their own section of data. And some of the data needs to be shared between all of the partners. So what would be the best service for storing and sharing the confidential administrative data, which is not so large in size?
I would recommend here the Eduni workspace. That's a good platform based on Microsoft SharePoint, and it's run at the CSC data centers in Kajaani. There's a special login method called Eduni ID, and you can use it to sign with very many large global providers and even to university account from all over the Europe or even the world. So it's very easy to get login access. No need to register to a new service for that. And even with if your partners don't have like Microsoft licenses, then Microsoft Teams could not be used. But this is like easily accessible to very large number of people. And if you have only administrative data, that won't be very many gigabytes in total, then the capacity would be also enough, because the capacity of Eduni is rather limited. So you cannot store large data sets there. But with this kind of a project, I think that would serve you well. And you can also organize the data access and access management between the partners in flexible ways.
Okay, so maybe that was case 3 solved this way with Eduni. So should we switch screens?
Yeah, very good. I'll now ask you to continue about secret data cases and services we have for that.
Oh. Now it should be there. So secret cases and services with secret data. So when we are handling secret data, the tools and services are evaluated by case principle, because all tools and services are not directly approved for use in all cases, but they can be part of the solution in most cases. So at first we have some encryption tools, which we are using in Aalto. These examples are of course from Aalto, so they might be different in other organizations. But using encryption tool in general raises the security when storing data, because it may also allow use of cloud services in cases where it wouldn't be allowed without encryption, and that might be a good ideal way of working. And always use strong encryption and strong password when you encrypt them. The strong password often means that it's long and difficult to remember. It could be, for example, at least 12 characters, including upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and special symbols before considered strong. But it should not include a known word or personal information that could be guessed somehow. And then minimize and pseudonymize sensitive personal data. The direct identifiers can be encrypted to reduce the risks. That's one use for it. Then we have a couple of links to guides with more information on encrypting in Aalto web services. And we have some examples of tools in use in Aalto. We have Funet File Sender, and this is a file sharing service with built-in end-to-end encryption, which is done in the browser in the client computer, so the data does not leave your computer before being encrypted. And we have 7-zip. It's used to compress and encrypt also bigger data sets containing large number of files into a package. And we have Veracrypt, which works as an encrypted virtual disk where the files are stored. And unlike the other tools, it makes it possible to save directly to the encrypted disk without storing the files anywhere else in unencrypted form first. And also Microsoft Office nowadays has strong encryption for its files, so it's a very convenient way for those. And last but not least, we have PGP, which provides strong encryption, but is more advanced to use. And we also have secure email for secure email messages and attachments. And then we have more cases, again, this time with more considering encryption and secret data. So case 4, we are doing some cooperation with the Finnish partner university. They conduct a survey and then transfer the data to Aalto for analysis. So how should we transfer the data to Aalto and back, and where should we store it during the analysis?
Okay. Was your data set confidential or sensitive? What kind of data are you having in the survey?
Yes, it contains sensitive personal data, and it contains questions of ethnicity and religion. So it's pseudonymized so that individual persons cannot be recognized.
Okay. You should encrypt the data during the transfer, and so then you can transfer it safely from a partner to another. And using encryption, I would recommend using the FUNET file sender, as it has built-in end-to-end encryption option. So you can just upload the files, click encrypt, give a strong password, and then the data will be transferred in encrypted form from end to end. And then you just share the password with your partner, for example, using an SMS message or other media. And then you can move the data and the results safely between the two universities. And then here at Aalto, if it's sensitive personal data and the persons might be identifiable, then you could ask for the Secwork folder on the security team, that you would have a Secwork folder at your, what is the secure network folder, right for your use and for your group, so that you can store the data in the secure network folder at Aalto and do your analysis there.
That should work in our case. Then we still have a case 5, where we are conducting some interviews and we need to store the audio and video data somewhere. And the interview reveals health data of the subject. So how could we store it?
Well, if you will have a videos to store revealing health data, so it's not that easy to pseudonymize videos, as they will be always the face and voice visible. So that means that you will have to encrypt the videos. And if you will have a bunch of files to encrypt, I think the VeraCrypt volume would be the easiest way to go, as you can set up one volume that encrypts every file and folder that is saved within it.
Yes, actually using VeraCrypt is a bit difficult. So would it be possible if we can pseudonymize some data to use it also without VeraCrypt in some way?
Yes, in that case, I would go trying to pseudonymize the data, for example, making the transcription of the videos and replacing all the names and direct identifiers. And then you could possibly work with teamwork or something if you have only pseudonymized data which doesn't reveal any more sensitive things. Or then if it's still sensitive and secret as a result, then you could ask for a Secwork network drive to continue with the research and analysis. And in that case, it would only be sufficient to encrypt only the original video files.
Okay, that would be a good way to do it. Then we can go on to the next slide, where we have something on our Secwork storage. So the Secwork is Aalto's internal secure data storage for sensitive data. It offers in-house strong storage with strict access control and strong encryption. It also offers automatic monitoring of logs to expose anyone tampering with the data. And the data is encrypted at rest in the storage system itself, and it can be accessed through VPN from outside the campus, but requires the users to have Aalto account. External access can be provided through Aalto visitors account, so it's possible, but it requires more effort than, for example, storage sharing in cloud services. And Secwork is available by application only for sensitive data, where teamwork is not secure enough. The need is evaluated case by case, and the environment is configured according to the user's needs. Since Secwork requires more resources, data that does not need it is not stored there just in case. So that is why we evaluate case by case. But some examples for which Secwork has been used: research data containing sensitive personal data and data with contractual and legal protection requirements, Aalto investment team data and examination certificates, and studied psychologists' administrative data have been stored there. And again, some more information is available by following the link. And then still something on CSC services for sensitive data. So CSC, or IT Center for Science, offers services for research data with sensitive data. And at the moment, their offering consists of 2 services, and 2 more are in pilot phase right now. So the ones that are available now are SD Connect, which is meant for storing and sharing encrypted sensitive data, and SD Desktop that can be used to create a private workspace to compute the sensitive data. And these are available, but features are being added all the time, so they are still developing. And then we have 2 more that are being piloted right now and should be in production by the end of this year. So SD Submit for publishing and SD Apply for reuse of data. And these services enable cooperation with Finnish academic organizations and their international collaborators. And we have a use case for this one also. We had a large data set with identifiable sensitive personal data from a government authority, which is being analyzed with researchers from several Finnish universities. And the CSC sensitive data services makes it possible to create an environment to prevent copying the data out of there, so it can be contained. And again, we have a link with more information down below. That, I think, was our presentation. So we could move to questions and answers.
Yes, that's it. Thank you everyone for listening, and handle with care your data, and don't be afraid to ask for any help. And if there's any issues or troubles may arise, don't panic, just call the security team and they will help you.